Wow. Interesting. Okay, so welcome to Pure Live. And this is Friday nights, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. And the reason I said interesting is because I've been having technical difficulties, so work with me on this. But anyway, we you know that we start with our sponsors, so here we go. Hmm. All right. We have been having some technical difficulties. I don't know. That might mean I need another platform. But anyway, I am so happy to present to you our guest for today. Um, he's running a little late. So, in the meantime, let's talk about what it is that we've been dealing with. And first of all, I want to extend the invitation of everyone to participate in this conversation because I really want to hear your thoughts. I really want to hear where everyone is at the time. Um, this has been a rough time for everyone. So that's where we're going to go with it while we're waiting on him. Um, in the meantime, let's talk about what's fun. So, um, I've been talking to you guys about the loss journey that I've been on and the health journey that I've been on, but I didn't tell you why. And I want to explain to you why. So I have been having some health journeys. Um, I am just turning off my volume so that we don't have any interruptions. Uh, um, uh, with my weight loss journey, I have been. I hope you can see. I hope you can notice this, but I've been working on just keeping it this way. So started off as something that was a health issue. So that's why I lost all the weight. But I was determined to not gain the weight back. So I've lost a good 50 pounds and I want to keep it that way. Um, it's challenging, but if you guys follow me on social media, I will be sharing certain recipes and certain things that I'm doing. One of the things that I'm doing to keep the weight loss off is growing my own produce. So I have herbs and produce that I am growing right now, and I'm doing not basil, basil, cilantro, and as far as the produce is concerned, I am doing like cucumbers and lettuce and collard greens and all kinds of stuff like that. So I am determined to be healthy. Why am I sharing this with you? I'm sharing because I feel like as many of that can handle responsibility, we should do it and share with our neighbors. I don't know how many people are participating or paying attention to the fact that we are dealing with all crazy mess. Um, in that process, anybody that can contribute to their neighbors and help their neighbors, that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm up to. But anyway, going beyond that, we have a special guest. By the way, when I found out about this special guest, I did not know that we were related. So this is super cool. So I just want to introduce to you guys my special guest for the day, Jabari Evans, and Doctor
Oh, thank you.
Jabari Evans.
Thank you.
Let's see if I am in. He should be in chat. It's taking a while. I don't know. System is moving
You
slow
got me? We
today,
good?
but we're gonna get his test regardless. I don't care. People are acting special today, but it looks like he should.
I think I'm here. I think I'm here. You can you hear me? Oh, she froze. Hello. Oh,
Yes, no, he's not able to hear me for some reason. Oh no,
hey,
I
are we
lost him.
good? Are we here? We good? Are we good?
Okay, so oh, there he is. Okay, I just want to explain to him join us. We are doing this because there is a lot of culture that is behind him. The things that he's been hired for, the things that the government has, before the current situation, has brought him into um, colleges. And this is why I want to bring him to the forefront. And I'm not sure what's going on. And he's here. Did bring out the he's yeah, he's here. So I'm not really sure what's going on with the technical is on purpose. Because this is the second that I've tried to bring him on, and it just
Can you see me now? Can you hear me now? We good? Oh no. I'm like, okay, are we good? Because I can see you and I could hear you, but I don't know if you can hear me. It says I'm here.
wow, that's crazy. Um, so I'm gonna and okay, um, I'm just trying to understand why it is that he is not hearing me. Interesting. Okay, so I'm
Hello?
gonna go ahead and play
You got me?
this video, and we'll go from there. Yeah. Dr. Jabari Evans. So he, he was invited to uh there we go.
Can you hear me?
Here,
Hello?
try me today. I swear.
I was about to say, because I can see myself. A show that we did, I don't know how long ago it was. It might have been 2009, 2008, 2009, something like that. We were in Portland, Oregon. It was 88 Keys, a rapper by the name of Adonis from Atlanta, and a couple other homies. I can't remember everybody, but it was probably like the worst show ever. Not worst show in that like we didn't do what we were supposed to do, but there was like maybe 7 people there. So it was just it just felt terrible. We do the show. We ran through like a whole 60 minutes, which is difficult to do when there's like 7 people. So the promoter pays us. So we were just happy that we got paid, because usually when there's that little of a crowd, you don't get paid. So we took that money. We went to, we just started walking up and down. I don't really know the streets in Oregon, but there's this strip where there's just like a lot of bars and clubs. And so we end up going to one of these nightclubs that was playing hip hop. We used the money to kind of bogart our way up into the DJ booth, and we ended up giving a show at the nightclub, which was like pretty cool because it ended up being like we met a lot of people, the DJs that were like there. Like we ended up getting connections to the radio station through just randomly walking into this nightclub. Mind you, we spent our entire like take from the show, so it probably looked like we had more money than we really did. So people were just catering to us that whole evening, and it was interesting that like the DJ that we ended up meeting had our music. So we were like, why didn't we have a show here? I don't know. It was just one of those moments where if we didn't decide to go out after having that terrible show, we would have never made all the connections or even got a chance to perform again. I guess I would say that was the fuck it moment. We were just like, instead of going back home and kind of drowning our sorrows in bourbon, we kind of just were like, let's go out, let's enjoy Portland. You know, we made a little bit of money. Let's figure it out, and it ended up being probably one of the best nights that I've ever had on tour, just in terms of like randomly falling into something. So it was pretty cool. That would probably be my fucking moment.
We good now? We had a. I saw the video where I'm telling my tour story.
Yeah. We can hear you now.
For sure. That's good.
So first, what I want you to do is,
Sure. My name is
can
Jabari
you
Evans.
hear
As you,
me?
I can hear you perfectly. It's funny because I over the course of like maybe the last, I
Okay.
don't know, decade, I went from, introducing myself as Jabari, as Knowledge, to now it's Dr. Evans, and it's a lot going on. But ultimately, call me whatever you want. Call me
Yeah.
present. Jabari Evans. I am an assistant professor of race and media at the University of South Carolina. I am also a hip hop scholar and rapper and author. Um, yeah, and I just put out 2 books, and I'm proud of that fact. And yeah, I'm here. I'm cool, and you're my family, and so family always supports family, and that also is something that we need folks to know.
Yeah,
For sure.
absolutely. Yes, this is my family. This is my cousin, and I not know until like the beginning of this
Right?
year, and that's cool.
It don't even matter though. It don't matter though. Like,
I'm glad
ult-
that I know, though. That I know now.
ultimately,
um,
we have such a great network of family members that the way this whole thing works is that when you find out someone in the family does something that is appealing or similar or in some way useful to another person in the family, people point you in the right direction. And so that's all that matters. And so the people who guided me to you are people who I see and know all the time. And so when my mom says, "Hey, you're gonna do this," that's all that matters. And I'm sure you hear it on your direction in the same way. So that's how family really works.
and, I saw through the, while I was putting the word out there that I was going to have you on the show, somebody that I know.
Hmm.
I was like, ooh, I wasn't expecting that to come through.
Oh, that's
But
like high school or
is that
like
crazy?
college.
Yeah, high
That's crazy.
school.
Yeah, that's wild. Okay. Yeah, 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 yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
crazy.
I mean,
Yeah, but
I had my
I think
little
it's so cool
Chicago
because
run.
it's like, right? It's cool because I feel like you don't know uh what people are gonna get into. You don't know what your fellow students are going to, strive and for him to be like, oh man, I went to school with this dude. He was ahead of me, but still, oh, crazy. And I think you probably don't even realize how much of a motivation you are.
Mm.
You know, this particular person I'm talking about is
Yeah.
actually a poet, and I know that that this is what you dabble in, and
That's crazy. That's wild. I
poetry
mean,
and rap and things.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing with that, and I know there's a little bit of a delay, so I hope I'm not overlapping you to the audience, but you know, I
No, I hear you good.
I had opportunities in high school to be around people who inspired me, right? So I was kind of like somebody who kind of came late to the party in terms of rapping and at least sharing the things that I was writing in my notebook. So I had a lot of friends that rapped and a lot of friends that made music. And I think the difference between all of us is that when I got to college, I started taking it a lot more seriously. And so I think a lot of the people I went to high school with were just like, dang, you took it to that next step. Like you actually went after a record deal, you actually, went on tour, you actually, collaborated with some of our heroes, and like you did some of the things that if maybe our parents didn't tell us we couldn't, drop out of school and become rappers, we would have did the same thing. So I think it takes courage to do that. And a lot of folks who I went to school with, if nothing else, they give me credit for just having the cojones to take it to that next step.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's break it down a little bit and tell everybody where you're from so we can understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Sure. I mean, I'm from 73rd off of Jeffrey Boulevard and on the south side of Chicago, to be very specific. And growing up in Chicago at the time for which I grew up in Chicago, there were some hip hop artists who were, really starting to make a name for themselves when I was coming of age, namely Common. And then later on, while I was in college, it was Kanye. But then also, I'm the same age as Lupe, and me and Lupe became cool. And so there's a interesting cohort or almost like a fraternity of rappers from Chicago. And it's all generational. But yeah, I think me growing up in Chicago at the time in which I grew up in Chicago, you were either a hooper, a gangbanger, or you was hip hop. And I think that was like the interesting thing is like hip hop was a thing. It was an identity that really meant something. And I was very much hip hop. And so people respected me for that. And people respected my craft and respected my intelligence. And it was also a way for me to not be so nerdy, right? So, that was the other thing is like being smart in the hood isn't always looked on as a positive thing. And I think that was the one thing that made me kind of appealing socially to women, so to speak.
Yeah, understood. I mean, and I guess a specific type of woman because when I was growing up, I I like guys that were a little rough around the edges, but I like the nerds too. And I'm just wondering, like, so when you grew up, yeah, I'm just saying, like a lot of us like a little
It
rough
flip
around the edges, right?
flops, the people who come from the nice side of the tracks like the bad side of the tracks, and then those who come from the other side of the tracks are also fascinated by the nerds. So I think I had the other thing going on.
Yeah. Absolutely right. And I love nerds as well because I'm myself. Um, so
Hmm.
what I'm wondering is like when you were growing up and you were your inspirations and everything, what was the strongest motivation?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think that unlike maybe some of my peers, my immediate family has always been inspiration for me, man. My mother has been a big influence in my life. My father has been a big influence in my life. My older sister's a painter and a sculptor and a performance artist, and watching her journey and being a creative and watching my parents support her was also part of what allowed me to feel liberated enough. to not feel boxed in. I think a lot of times people go to college and their parents tell them, "Hey, you got to be an engineer or be a doctor or study law or do business." And that wasn't my experience. I had a sister that had
Right.
went to school for visual art, and her doing visual art and her doing some of the things that she did, studying abroad, learning new languages, moving to New York. She did a lot of the, you know, I like to say sometimes the youngest is able to benefit from what the oldest uh kind of suffers with, right? So I think that my sister took a lot of bumps and bruises for me to be able to be creative. And so my parents kind of already understood what it meant to have a creative child, but they were creative people too. They were just first generation college. And because of that, like I think their parents didn't understand their creativity, whereas our parents understood our creativity. And so I would say, it may be cliche to say this, but my parents were really my motivation. My community also motivated the art, but I think in terms of me just stepping out there and becoming who I've become, even as a professor, my mom and dad were both professors. So I think, I was very fortunate. I got the parent lottery in that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I am the same, and getting the parent lottery, all the talents and things that I've learned through my parents, that they are entrepreneurs. So it's a blessing, you know. Um, and I was talking to a
Yeah.
lot of our
I would even go
family
so far as to say we got the
recently.
family
And
lottery. We got a family lottery too. It's a family lottery. We
yes,
have a great network of
yes.
people, a wonderful network of people, and it's normal for us. But I've went to school and I've, been around colleagues, I've been around friends, and they tell me all the time that the dynamic that we have within our family throughout the Hannons in particular is just not normal. Like we have a real tight knit network of folks who support one another, that are professional, that are educated, that are, we support and we push each other, but we also are there in love, and that don't always work. Meaning, like, we have blind faith. We don't even got to know you for real. We gonna still love you for real.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are positives and negatives to that. I do appreciate the positives. It's what led me to you. Um, you know, my mother's like, "Hey, I know you're looking for people for your show. There's an amazing person in our family that we haven't even tapped into." And I was just like, "Why? Why haven't we tapped into this? Like, what is the problem?" So, you know,
Hey,
I I would say this. I feel like, especially now, and like I told people, I this is not a political platform. That's not how I rock.
okay,
But dealing
for
with,
sure.
we have to connect. It's not even yeah, maybe if you do, maybe if you don't. It's like a necessity. We have to connect with family. We have to even with neighbors,
Yeah,
the people that we
real talk.
know are capable of doing things. Like, for example, we are growing herbs and produce. We connected with our neighbors to do the same. We're like, okay, well, what you aren't growing, I'll grow. Whatever I'm growing, you won't grow. We'll exchange in that way. So what I'm wondering is, I am being very careful with my verbiage, but with how things have changed, yes, with how things have changed, have you felt the urge to change your ways?
It's an interesting question. I think on the one hand, right, I entered into the job that I hold right now in 2020. In 2020, we're right off the heels of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and all of that stuff. And I was sort of brought in to teach race and representation. I was brought in as a DEI hire, very explicitly. I was brought in to sort of bring change to the department in which I work. And,
Mhm.
on the one hand, it was seen as something that I saw as a challenge that I took on full steam. But I also recognize that I'm in a red state in the Bible Belt, and that there are some things about this environment and there are some things about this state and the government here that will, not ever fully embrace everything that I'm trying to do. And so, I always move with caution. I'm from Chicago. We look both ways before we cross any street. And so I recognized that, I was gonna be able to, do the things that I want to do because I'm crafty about how I do it. But in this time that we're in, I think it's even more critical for me to be vigilant and to be strong about some of the things that I've been doing. But I won't lie and say that there aren't moments where I have to shift the way I present what I do. But I think everything that I do, it hasn't really changed. And I also recognize that having a son that's a teenager, he's seeing what I'm doing, and in some ways he's going to model himself after the things he's been exposed to. So I'll just be like, yeah, all right, well, I can't fold under this pressure that maybe it would seem to switch what I need to be doing. And so that's the one thing that I'll say is, like, family's always been center for me. Taking care of home has always been centered for me.
Mhm.
But being black is so important, and protecting black people is so important. And in the
Yeah.
context of what I do every day, um, that's the goal, is to teach both black and non-black students about the history of our people in this country and how we've been represented in mass media, and how we can also utilize that history to be more informed for a better future.
Absolutely. So I have and a 20-year-old son. And I'm bringing that up because,
Hmm.
uh, they're dealing with the here and now. Yeah. So I want to know if both of my sons were to come to you for advice, what would you tell them in dealing with the here and now?
Hmm. It's a great question.
Thank you.
At the same token, I guess I would give some of the same. No, it's a wonderful question. I guess I would give some of the same advice that I've been trying to give my son as of late, which is that, you have to plant your flag in this world. And I think when you're young, sometimes you think you have a lot of time. You think that time is infinite. You think that, you'll figure it out or it'll fall out of the sky. And that's not really how things work. What I found is the people who get things are the people who are very intentional about going and getting those things. And so part of that is A, figuring out what your passion is, B, expressing that to people who are closest to you and figuring out how they can provide resources for you. And then the third thing, I suppose, is thinking ahead, always thinking ahead, because I think often, again, we stay trapped into the vacuum of the moment. And one thing that I even as much as I think I succeeded, um, I don't know a tenth of I don't know, like, when I was in my 20s, it's just like I didn't know what I know now. And so I think I could have gotten there quicker if I listened to the adults that were trying to tell me things when I was younger. I thought I knew everything. And so the older you get, you realize that really you know nothing. I think that's that's the thing that I would impart on a young black man in particular. The other thing is like, don't waste away too much of your energy on relationships that may not be there in the end anyway, because I think that happens a lot for young men as we focus our time on women or romantic relationships, and it doesn't always. It's like, all right, get yourself together and then go get your relationship. My uncle Lay always said, like, you can um you never
Yeah.
lose women
I
chasing
believe.
money, but
I
you lose money chasing women. Not that women aren't
oh, okay.
wonderful. Women are wonderful, but
Thank you. Um, um,
you know.
so beautiful. I appreciate that guidance for a young men that I have growing up. Um, so what I'm curious about is and dealing with today's so let me remind everybody that my oldest son is in National Guard. And so, with everything that's going on right now, his safety, I am concerned about what's going on.
Mm,
And I am concerned about what to tell him um, in regards to looking out for his safety and staying. What am I trying to look for? Making sure that he stays to his standards, even though he may be ordered to do something that is not great. Um, and I did let him know that we have family that understands and that would be willing to encourage him. But so with all of these young men, I realized recently that my son is far from the only one. There are several young men
mm.
that have been brought into the military recently and are dealing with very challenging situations. What do you think is
Mhm.
important for them to remember while they are carrying out their duties?
That's an interesting question as well. I would say that,
Thank you.
there was a point there was a there was a point when I didn't really have a great concept of, folks who enter into our military system and the way that they think or the way that they go about finding their way there. I only had reference to those who I went to high school with, who I guess were the individuals who either A, had a lot of family that already were in the military, or B, they weren't college material, quote unquote. Right. And so
Mm,
the interesting thing being here in Columbia, South Carolina, is we have Fort Jackson right here. And I would say we're very much a military city, and I have fraternity brothers that are in the military or retired military or active military, whatever. And I have a lot more conversations with folks, and I've gained an understanding of where they stand. That being said, a lot of the folks that I know that have been in the military are like, we're in a state of chaos. And if it was like this when I entered it, I don't know if I would have entered it. So a lot of the
mhm,
advice that I would give is based on that feedback that I've gotten from those individuals. Because as a civilian, I don't feel privileged
Yeah.
enough to speak too much to that experience because they always talk, when when we had these like conversations, there's the you're a civilian, you're this or whatever.
Right.
But they're willing to give me that information because we're close as individuals. And like I said, going back to it is on the outside looking in, I could think that, but they told me very explicitly that like this is a period in time for which our country is in a turning point, and there are things that were kind of commonplace in the military and commonplace in terms of how we did things that aren't commonplace right now. And so that fear, I
Mm.
don't want to, juice you up and make you not lose more sleep at night, but some of it's real and it's justified, right? But at on the flip side of that, I think folks are also understanding that that particular lifestyle and that particular sector has a way of, I guess, always returning to the mean, if we want to speak like statistically, right? Like where what's going on right now, there's a general optimism that everything will return back to the way that it was. And there's also an optimism that those that maybe we are at odds with in terms of our global structure, right? Those things will get rectified as well. But
Mm.
to say that things haven't been disrupted would be like just ignoring the obvious, not having a grasp on the obvious.
That's a good point. Very good point. Um, I want to know, like, okay, so you have a child, you have one that you are raising up, and I want to know
Hmm.
what advice that you give, you know, uh, knowing that the future. So the reason I'm asking this is because what's going on right now is not something that I prepared for. I didn't see it coming.
Mm,
A lot of us
mm,
didn't see it coming, but some of us saw it
fair.
coming. you know. So with that
There's
being
those
said,
people
and
too. Yeah.
preparing our children for yeah, they're preparing our children for the next generation. What would you tell them to pay attention to?
Mm. Sheesh. You on fire tonight. One of the things that I would say is like, I think listening to our elders, our elders, I think get as I'm getting there, right? I'm now, past that threshold of 40. So, I'm not by any means young, but I'm not by any means like the most elder. But
Mm,
again, I go back to the things that were imparted upon me by folks who really tried to give me the game. And I didn't always want to listen to it. I didn't always want to hear it. And I think where I am now, I call on myself like trying to recall those things. I call on like, my older sister, I call on my mom, I call on my dad, even while I'm, seeing them. And, even the things that my friends impart upon me, I think one of the things that we have to do is realize that we aren't individuals in this fight, right? Like the things that we are trying to pursue. If you don't have people around you that want to see you win, then you're around the wrong people because they exist. And so, I think having a collective unit, having, a good network of people, not just family, but those who are your chosen family, um, it's
Mhm.
essential, and that doesn't mean you have to know everyone, but having a good 4 to 5 people that you can rely upon for certain types of information or just certain types of emotional boosts or well-being, it's critical because this world is not meant for us to be in supremacy. It's not to get too deep, but it's just like one of those things where black inferiority is a thing. Um, and so we have to fight against that on a regular basis. Even when we have achieved, sometimes we feel like imposters. And so having a good network of people that are able to ground you and bring you back to focus is always going to be key. And I think that's one of the things that, if I had, the knowledge that I have now back maybe 15, 20 years ago, I'd probably be better off. But I think one of the things that really has centered me is having a family of my own, having a wife, having a marriage. All those things have sort of centered me in a different way. Whereas I think before I was just out here roaming, trying to figure it out. You know what I'm saying? And I thought I knew everything and I was on my own and I was a kamikaze. But I think now I have this a more settled um approach to things. But when I talk to younger guys or younger people, like that's the first thing I give them is just like, man, if you pay enough attention, everything you need is actually right around you. People giving you the game. You just got to soak it up.
Yep, absolutely. So let me say this, and I've been trying to figure out how to present this, because I don't want to put you in a bind.
Okay.
So since out to you, we have been
Okay.
experiencing situations. Yeah, let me put it like that. Situations, and um, if people are at a loss as to where to go and what to do and what to fight for, you know. And I'm one of those people. That being said,
Mm.
and this is not a political play, can you help us to understand, like maybe I'm trying not to be political, so maybe you could help us understand, like, what things we should be focused on. I know, right? What things should we be on to fight for help us? What have you seen that we can, like, okay, we're gonna fight for this, and this will help us in this struggle kind of situation because um it's a bunch of fights, but we need to know about all of the fights. And so I'm
Mm.
just wondering, what can you tell us,
Mm.
tip into?
Wow. You taking the cake tonight. I would say it's what again, I think I'll go back to just to ground my words and to make it make more sense. I teach young people here at this university, and a lot of the classes that I teach think about racial representation, think about fairness, think about civil rights, think about white supremacy, think about critical race theory, think about how black people have sought to empower themselves over the course of the last century. And I think one thing I always come back to is that, you know, as much as things change, they remain the same. There are things that were going on in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s that are still going on to this day.
Mhm.
The remnants of those periods are still here. And I think as much as, this isn't a political platform, quote unquote, one thing I will say that I say in class all the time is that being in a black body in America in and of itself is a political act. Um,
Ugh.
we have been dehumanized. We have been, you know, marginalized. We have been plotted against. And this wasn't something that is speculative, right? This is stuff that was in the
Right.
Constitution. This is stuff that was real. This is stuff that was
Right.
documented. This is stuff that was filmed. It was photographed. Like, we have had a hard
Absolutely.
time, a hard go of it here. And our bodies have been used as labor to fund the economy here. So just being a black body in America is a political act. And so I say that to start off most of the classes in which I teach race. And it's true. So it's like, even if you don't want to be political, just you being in the room, if you want to think about a predominantly white institution or a college or a university, for instance, um,
Right.
if you enter into a cafeteria where there's 300 white people and there's 7 black people, those 7 black people are going to figure out how to maneuver that room. But also, those 7 black people are probably more noticed in certain ways. They're not the default. And so
Mhm.
when you're the other, you then become either the problem, or you become the outlier, or you become the issue, right? Let's talk about the black issue. Let's talk about the equity issue. Let's talk about the diversity issue. And so, what I'm saying,
Yeah.
like, I just try to keep folks into focus in terms of, the best thing we can do is to build allies. It's not that we should hate white folk. It's not that we should um necessarily walk around with a chip on our shoulder. It's just we have to have our eyes wide. And I hate that the word woke has been turned into something that it wasn't initially meant to be, because that word actually meant so much to our community. um and so, yeah, it may be cliche in the context of this conversation, but like, it does not have to be political to be black and just to want more for yourself and to want liberation, to want equity. And some of that doesn't have to be political. It's just, you can open your eyes and not understand anything about an election and understand that black folks get the short end of the stick. And I think that's the thing that we want to shift and change.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean that our whole existence should be resistance either. It
Right.
shouldn't all be about resistance, because resistance centers whiteness, right? So the thing that I've been about lately, even in my classes and in my research, is centering black joy into the things that I talk about. Like, finding your joy is the thing that can also be a superpower.
Absolutely. So I hate that we're getting close to the end of the time. Um, I feel like we're gonna need a part two.
Hey, it's
And this
okay. We
this makes
said,
me so
we just
sad.
had to we just had to kick it off. We had to kick it off, and it's okay. And we're family, so it's
Yes.
okay. We'll come back.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Y'all don't know how busy
For
this
sure.
man is though. So this is sad.
Yeah.
But
Don't do that.
I do I do want y'all to understand, like, I am passionate about
Yeah.
this, and I definitely have to bring him back so we can talk about this further. The truth of the matter is, we are dealing with some situations that we have not dealt with in our lifetime. When I say our lifetime, I am speaking
Yeah.
of the millennials, the Gen X, even the baby boomers. We have not dealt with this specifically in our lifetime. So we have to
Yeah.
talk about, what is important and what we should be paying attention to, and what it is that we should focus on and grow in right now and forever on. The fact of the matter is, we as a nation, and when I say we, I mean African Americans, I do. But people of color can do this, no matter what it is that your race is. We actually did come to a point where we were able to function without what is functioning right now. But it was burned to the ground. We will grow on this. We will learn about this. And we're gonna develop this because I want us to thrive. And this is why I brought Dr. I'm gonna emphasize Dr. Jabari
Uh-oh.
Evans.
Oh, you gonna put
Uh,
the you know put the
Doctor.
you gonna put everything on it.
Yes, doctor. My hair flows forward. Jabari.
Your mom
Um,
might tell
we
you this, but like back there was a point where Dr. Evans had to either be my mom or my dad. So it's interesting to now hold that
well,
title and you know,
yeah, yeah. But
do something
this
with
is
it.
why this, this is why my mother was so excited about presenting you to me because it's about the next generation. It really is. We have to
Yes.
uh, decide. What we're gonna do. We're gonna fight, and what does that look like?
Mm,
And this is what I want us all to join in
yeah.
on and figure out what does that look like.
Yeah.
What do we have to do? What kind of
Discourse is so
the
important.
fact of the matter is we don't even
It's
know
so
how the
important.
government works. Yeah,
It's so important. You know,
we have to help them know.
I teach students every day who are thinking about being storytellers. Some are wanting to be journalists, some are wanting to be in PR, some advertising, some film, some television. Ultimately, you know, I think that is where I get the gratification is when I see students that I've helped go to that next stage of life and they're able to take something that I imparted upon them and move it forward. But like to your point, our family, like I said, I'll go back to it. We got a real strong family foundation. And I think one of the things that I've grown to really appreciate is the fact that that I had elders that were dope and did not want to see me falter. And I think that's what we got to get back to when we talk about this time and this climate and this day and age. Like, ultimately, it's really about like getting back to us. Because if we're right internally, if we're right with each other, if we're looking out and we got our T's crossed and our I's dotted, nobody can stop us. We can figure it out on our own. And we'll just figure it out at the next election and rectify our wrongs. But like ultimately the black community has to serve the black community, and black people have to serve black people, and we have to be more considerate and caring for one another. And that's one of those things that, again, I'm as someone who's a professor, I ain't always been good at it, but I could talk about it. But now I'm trying to force myself to be better at it. It's like you got to talk the talk and walk the walk.
Absolutely. Definitely gonna have to bring you back on because there's a different part of
Let's do
this
it.
that I want to talk about. Exactly. There's another part of this that I want to talk in regards to our history and the people that are deciding, okay, well, forget about America. I just want to touch.
Uh,
I just how we can still thrive. We're here. We are. You know, but yeah, I definitely want to bring you back, and all you guys that have questions for Doctor, please put them in the chat. He can address them when he does come back. Um, and I appreciate you so much. What I want to do right now, and I know this is at the very end of the show, I would like you to leave your words of wisdom for our family.
Wow. I would just say that, one of the things that we've talked about during the course of this evening has just been the state of affairs in the world. And so I think, one thing that I talk about in terms of the context of hip hop culture, right, is that the best change and the best disruption, the best innovation, the best good trouble happens usually when we're at a state of survival. And I think that's the state that we're in right now. And so, as much as we want to be down, and as much as we might want to be fearful, as much as we might want to be ambivalent and unsure, the one thing I know about our people, if you look at history, is when we are faced with our backs against the wall, we show up, we show out, and we come back better than ever. And so, I think that's the one thing that we should take
Absolutely.
solace in, and we should just keep moving forward one step at a time. And I think that's the thing that is the thing that we should be kind of centering into our focus. The other thing, again, like to bring back this idea of joy. My wife's been reading a book even about like rest as resistance. Black
Mm,
folks are not often afforded the ability to be leisurely. We're not often afforded the ability to dream. We're not often afforded the ability to just be. And so,
yeah.
I would impart upon your audience to try to seek out what makes them joyful, that doesn't have to do with the bill, that doesn't have to do with what other people think of them, and what doesn't necessarily have to do with what others consider to be what black people are supposed to be doing. Do what you enjoy.
Mm.
Because white people do it every day.
Oh, I love bird. Yes.
So, why should white people have all the fun?
Right.
Have some fun in life.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And you're so right. Um, and remember to
The
embrace a
truth.
perfect design, which is you guys know.
There you go.
We're here. So you guys know, next Friday is my birthday, so I will probably not be on here. But the following Friday, we will be here at 9 p.m. Central
You
Standard
shouldn't be on here. No, do not be on here.
Time. Exactly right. So we'll be here at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time following Friday. And with you guys, and any questions you have in regards to this particular um, episode, then let us know, and I will make sure it gets to the right people. And anything that he has coming up, I will let you guys know. Actually, in these things, I did find the podcast that you guys had, so I'll post that as well. I am going to make sure that you guys get the guidance. That's what I'm all about. I want my platform to give you
Sounds
guys
good.
information, resources, and guidance. So I'm gonna let you know show episodes as well. Yeah, not next Friday, but the Friday after 9 p.m. Central. We'll
Amazing.
have them back. All right. Thank you guys. Love you. Bye. What does this play? One second.